Welcome to Super Talk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride. All right, Captain, I think we're ready.
Let's go.
In 3, 2.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode number 49, and I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettis. And with me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, Titanium Tony Estrella. Titanium!
Professor, how are you?
Good. 49. You know, we're creeping up on it.
We're getting there, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're getting there.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm really digging it, and it's been a hell of a year, and I appreciate everything you've done for the show. It's been a lot of fun, but I got a whole tear-jerking, heart-wrenching speech that I'm going to give you at our big episode, our 50.
Our anniversary episode. Episode 53, which will be or maybe 52.
52,
yeah.
I think so.
All right, we'll do it on 52. We've got a couple of crazy weeks coming up here. Really excited. We've got a great episode of Hawkeye to review this week, and then we've got our Spider-Man No Way Home review episode next week to look forward to.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to go over Hawkeye episode 4. We got some news, some really cool news. And then you and I are seeing Spider-Man Friday at 7. And we were talking earlier that the preview of Spider-Man, what is it called? The premiere for a lot of the internet journalists and other journalists in the kind of in that realm.
The official premiere event is tonight in LA.
Yes.
Right. So it's tonight in Los Angeles. And as Marvel has done, Marvel and Sony, I guess you could say for this one, have done recently, is they've extended invitations to a lot of the internet influencers and we'll say, YouTubers that
the stars themselves,
content creators, yeah. But there's a lot of people like you and me that are going to these premieres. They're being invited to go out there because they're influencing the audience, and they're going. So what we're going to tell you is that tonight that is happening, and do not be surprised if everything and anything about this movie is spoiled on the internet tomorrow. We've covered this in previous episodes.
Yeah.
These are people that make a living talking about these types of events and these types of movies, and while they'll never admit that they're the ones leaking or spoiling this content, they can go to these movies. Somebody who knows who it is going to leak something. It's going to be the end credit scenes, how many there are and what's in them. It's going to be, here's the big surprise. Here's all the things that I saw in the movie. It's all going to be on the internet tomorrow, and you got to ignore it. And what they'll do is they'll do it under some anonymous account, and then they'll go, "Oh, these things leaked on the internet. Let's talk about it." And come clickbait my video, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you and I are going into radio silence starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going dark.
We will not view, nor watch, nor look up, nor click on anything related to Spider-Man movie starting tomorrow. Because it will be spoiled. There's too much that'll be spoiled. They'll spoil the whole movie for us before we get to see it on Friday. We want our fresh perspective when we go there Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go dark. I'm going to try not to put anything. By the time this podcast is posted, by the time the YouTube show is up, it'll be closer to go time for Spider-Man movie anyway. But try to stay off. Social media as much as you can, folks. It's just not worth it.
Look, people will start talking. You'll get your friends that'll look it up, and even though you don't want to look it up, your friends will look it up, and they'll text you, and just try to ignore it. Because frankly, we'd all like to be surprised collectively when we see the movie the first time. And even we, as a podcast, this weekend when we do our show reviewing the movie, we'll give away some things that are big, but we're not going to try to spoil the whole movie for our audience. But at the same time, we're trying to give a collective spoiled review because the movie will be out and everything will be out by then.
But, by then. But
you and I, when we walk in that theater Friday, don't want to know anything that happens.
No,
even though we assume a lot of things that are going to happen.
We not only assume it, we kind of feel like we're correct some of the times. But yeah. I don't want to know everything. I want to be surprised. And that's a great thing about a lot of these movies is you go in and these surprises kind of happen, and it makes the movie more endearing. It makes the movie more impactful, and I'm hoping for that for Spider-Man.
Well, maybe when we go through the news section tonight, maybe we'll talk about the 3 or 4 or 5 things that you and I expect to see. And we know nothing about this, by the way. Nothing's been spoiled yet. So we'll say, here's the things that we think are going to happen, and we're, expecting to see, but we're not really sure yet. But these are things that we're kind of assuming are going to happen. So we'll talk through that.
We'll do some assumptions.
All right. Well, let's start the show like we do every week by thanking the patrons. These are the listeners that bring the show to you. They sponsor this show directly. They've signed up on our Patreon page, patreon.com/supertalk, and they said, hey, I'm going to give $1 every time these guys release episodes, a way for me to support the show. It really doesn't cost a lot, and it really helps us out a ton. So if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/supertalk. Titanium and I are going to be doing a giveaway for all of our patrons on our anniversary episode. So if you want to be part of that, please sign up. And we really thank the people that have done that so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives us street cred, people. I mean, that's what we're really looking for, some street cred, right?
We want to get invited to these premieres, and we can't do that without your help.
We're just jealous. We're definitely bitter that these monkeys get to go to these great shows and spoil it for everybody. I tell you what, Kevin Feige, my boy, invite us. We won't spoil anything. Promise. Pinky swear. Come on. Invite us.
Well, and a lot of these content creators and super fans and people on the internet, they've been doing this a handful of years, and they're big fans. And let's say they've been following the MCU since it started, 10, 11 years ago. Look, you and I have been following this content pretty much our entire lives.
Sure.
And great. I'm glad it's now mainstream. I'm glad it's in. Everybody's a big fan. Nothing makes me happier than the characters that I love being portrayed on the big screen and me being able to see them live. I love that. But look, we've been doing this a long time, people. So support the people that really love these characters. 40,
thank you very much.
Something years now. So
yeah, appreciate it.
All right, well, let's get into the review section. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we had a new episode of Hawkeye. Episode 4 came out last Wednesday, and let's get your impressions, Titanium. I mean, I thought once again the show continues to hit balls out of the park. It's really great.
Let me say this: if somebody says to me, or if I read one more thing that says this show was a filler, I will karate chop you right in the thorax. It is not a filler. This show was solid. The writing again is off the charts. My favorite episode is 3 still, just because that car chase was spectacular. That was really cool. But this episode is great. I mean, this is comic book classic stuff. Street level superheroes. And the writing is fantastic. I really like this episode. I thought it set up to blow up the last 2 episodes. I think we're going to get some really exciting stuff. But again, worst kept secret in this kind of series was revealed in this episode. And I thought it was done very tastefully and great and creatively, and I loved it. I love this episode. There's so many mirrors of Hawkeye and how he became Hawkeye and his decisions in life, and now we see Kate making these decisions and doing kind of the same thing, following in his footsteps. The relationship was so built in this episode, creating a much tighter bond. I mean, really good stuff. I really liked it.
I think you're spot on, and this is a setup episode. Episode 4 was an episode that was meant to set up the last 2 episodes, right? The finale episodes, right? So,
but not filler. It was not filler.
I call it a setup episode because
very good.
And again, I think if we look at the first 2 episodes, it's really kind of an introduction to Kate Bishop, the character, and then we did a lot of character development of her backstory, her family, where she came from, how she got the skills she has. It's a lot of reminders of Hawkeye and who he is and where he came from, and kind of refamiliarizing him with the audience. So that's the first couple of episodes. Last episode was really a lot of plot development, finding out who they're fighting against, why they have a beef against them, what's happening, what are they fighting against. We got a lot of that. And this episode was really, again, setting up the finale, but also developing the bond between the two of them. And I thought that they did such a great job. And we've talked about Haley Steinfeld, home run casting. She's just been great in the role of Kate Bishop.
Yeah, amazing.
But the relationship that she and Hawkeye have developed, you can see blossoming now. And all she wants is to be part of his life. And she wants his life. And she just wants to prove to him that she's worthy of what he does. And he's warning her, look, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sacrifices. Yeah. I'm here with you, and I'm not home with my family on Christmas, right? I've lost a lot in my life. I've lost a lot in my career. And you're setting yourself up for the same thing. Is that really what you want?
I think she got a glimpse of that last episode, in episode 3, when he was talking to his son on the phone, and she was kind of narrating because he couldn't hear. So I think she's starting to understand a little bit about the sacrifices that I think she's going to have to really understand it soon, because I think some shit's going to hit the fan. I think her mother, there's a lot of questions about her mom and how deep she is in this organization. Jacques, I think there's a lot of questions about him.
Let's talk through that, because I've got some theories.
Well, let me ask you one question, though, before we get started here. Were you disappointed that the swordsman did not know, it wasn't comic book accurate, so they went in a different direction? Were you disappointed?
Well, so what we're alluding to is the end of episode 3, Hawkeye was in Kate's penthouse apartment, and Jack was there, and brought the Ronin sword up to Hawkeye's neck at the end of the episode, said, "Don't move."
Right.
And we were all assuming, based on we gave you kind of a background into Hawkeye's history and the swordsman. The swordsman in the comic books was the one who taught Hawkeye how to use a sword and all these weapons,
trained him,
and there was a big, deep relationship there. So what I'm saying is, either the show, which I think is likely the story, the show has chosen not to use that history, which is fine. Okay. And I wasn't disappointed at all.
Good. Okay.
But it also could mean Hawkeye does know him and is not saying anything. I think that's less likely, but it
based on his conversation later in the episode when he's like, "Oh, Jack Duquesne is part of the tracksuit mafia, right?"
Well, they found that out eventually, that he's more deeply involved than he's leading on. And I got some theories behind that, and I'll kind of talk through that. But the episode this week starts where we left off, and eventually, Kate's mom comes home, and Jack and her mom are sitting at the table talking to Hawkeye and Kate, and she's like, "Wait a minute, you're helping him with an Avengers level threat?"
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, yeah, we've got all this stuff to do." And,
Clint's like, "Nah, not really.
CB1's my partner." I love the CB1 reference, CB1. We have another inside joke about CB1 and CB2 that we do with a bunch of our buddies. But, she's like, and he's like, no, we're not partners. And he said, "Well, we're kind of
That was a shout out to Ted Craig, by the way. Shout out to Ted Craig.
Yeah, no, Ted Craig's actually CB2.
He's CB2, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Chris Barnes is CB1.
Yeah, exactly.
Ted Craig is CB2.
Yeah, it's funny. But anyway, and they were alluding to the fact that, that she is partnered with him, but he's like, no. And he's trying to kind of discount, because he's trying to deflect all the tension away from her as much as he can.
Yeah, in front of her mother, right?
Well, and she eventually says to Hawkeye, "Look, it's my daughter. I don't want anything to happen to her. You got to keep," he's like, "Look."
Dude, when she first saw Hawkeye in the living room, her eyes were like huge, like, holy shit, there's an Avenger. And she makes a snide comment like, "What's an Avenger doing in my dining room?" Right?
Right.
But her eyes and her expression, I think, was telling. She's sketchy, dude. She's shady. There's something up with her. I don't know what it is. But you're right. They're having that conversation at the table, and that was very interesting.
But we see a conversation, and Jack is making funny references and really kind of seems oblivious to a lot of things that are going on.
Hey, by the way, thank you for saving the world.
Yeah. He's like, "You're welcome."
You're welcome.
Right. But eventually they dismiss him, and they tell Kate to stay, and they let him go. And he does end up pocketing the Ronin sword, which he had seen there. And he's like,
"I'm taking that."
And he's like wondering, how is this in the house? Why do they have it? But I'm taking it with me. And he
does.
Shit. Yeah. So, I'm sure he's thinking that. But he leaves. Then she
she stops him at the elevator and kind of gives him a speech. And that's another thing. I don't know if the audience picked up on this, but she says something, Clint, do you have kids? I'm assuming you do. Like, how did she know to say that? How did she know he has kids? That's telling.
We get that at the end of the episode, right? Yeah.
I'm sure, but I'm telling you right now, there's my suspicions of her is at a DEFCON 5. Like, it's raised. She's shady.
I think I figured it out, but I like it. We can talk through that. And again, I think what we saw, the conversation that Kate and Jack and her mom had after Hawkeye left. Was really, he made some silly kind of innuendo that was like misspoken.
Right.
And they are always laughing at him because he, it's the pot calling the kettle brown. And he's like, no, you always make you do it the wrong way and everything like that, right?
Absence makes the heart grow older instead of fonder.
Right.
It's funny.
So, he's playing, and again, what they're making it look like to us in the audience that he's playing coy and he's doing all this stuff on purpose. I think it's actually quite the opposite. But, she eventually is able to, leave. She ends up leaving. And then Hawkeye goes and talks to Kazi. So he meets Kazi in his car. And Kazi comes out. And he basically tells him, just to kind of summarize their conversation, you Echo, you got to get her to stop with the Ronin thing.
Right.
It's going to get her killed. And it's not worth it, and her vendetta against Ronin is just not worth it, and she's going to get killed, and it's going to get her in trouble. You need to tell her to back off.
And the big guy's not going to really like her pursuing the revenge scheme for her father, so I agree with you. I think he knows something there. I have a theory of that. Did I do something? I lost something there.
Yeah, headphones.
I have a theory of that. And can we talk about it now, or do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. My theory is that I think Hawkeye knows that he wasn't the Ronin that killed her father, that it was another Ronin.
Somebody set him up.
Somebody was portraying Ronin to kind of wipe some unwanteds out of the organization.
And or to get Echo to target Ronin, the character, because they needed people to fight against the Ronin, who was tearing apart the criminal underworld at the time.
Correct. Yeah.
So it did put a target on the Ronin. Echo was now her life mission is to end this person.
Yeah. I think it was the swordsman. I think he was dressed up as the Ronin. Perhaps, I don't know.
Maybe,
and it could have been a power move. Now he's the CEO of Sloan LLC. So I don't know. That's my theory. I don't know if it's right or not, but that's my speculation.
Well, then we fast forward a little bit. Kate and Clint are in a diner, and this is where Clint's kind of telling her, "Look, this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
Being a hero, and this is where she's drawing a costume for him on a piece of paper, and he's like, I've spent my entire career trying not to be noticed." Trying not to be seen.
I'm a ghost.
And now you're trying to develop an image for me when I don't want to be known.
So
and she's just she draws the comic book accurate Hawkeye costume with the wings on the cowl and the H on the helmet. Really funny.
Yeah, that was a cute scene. By the way, happy birthday, Haley Steinfeld. Just turned 25, so I know she watches the show all the time. So happy birthday, Haley. Okay.
Way to go, Haley.
Yeah.
You're killing it on the show. But yeah, so we got through all that, and then they decide, which I thought was awesome. He sends Kate to go get some help from the LARPers.
Yeah.
And the live action
they need trick arrows, and there's some trick arrows.
Yeah, he's like, we're going to need a lot of trick arrows.
Yeah.
We're going to need a lot of trick arrows. And then he explains, they're having is a great conversation. And frankly, I'll kind of mention this to the audience. In the Matt Fraction comic run, Hawkeye was the kind of shoot by the hip, kind of just reckless person, and Kate was the more measured, kind of equal, trying to keep him on the equal.
Yeah.
And it's completely opposite in this show. She's the reckless, kind of shoot from the hip person, and he's the more kind of steady person. So they kind of flipped that from the comics to the show, which was great.
I like it. It's more believable, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But the whole conversation they had about the boomerang arrow...
hilarious.
...was great, but it's straight out of the comic book.
Yeah, literally, he was obsessed with boomerang arrows.
Word for word from the comic book.
Now she's obsessed with boomerang.
Yeah. Right, he's like, we should just make boomerang arrows and not have to worry about going to get them. She's like, well, wait a minute. they would just come back at you. You just got to duck and catch it. But that's straight from the comic book, which was fantastic. Yeah. But the point he was making was we need a lot of trick arrows. And he's like, I've got a lot of arrowheads, but I don't have a lot of arrows. He says, you can't just put the heads on any arrow.
On any shaft.
On any shaft. You got to have, and he's like, I need to get mine back. He said, so basically you kind of learn that all these times he's shooting his arrows, he's going back to go get his arrows like later on or find them somehow. But they find out that the arrows are being held in a police, facility. And he's like, hey, we should go talk to the LARPers because one of them's a cop and she might be able to help out.
Correct. Right.
So Kate goes to the park and meets with the LARPers who are rehearsing at the park. And they all, Hawkeye needs your help. And they're like, okay, we're in. But what do we get out of it? It was like all this. It was great. And then Hawkeye comes back after he talked to Kazi to the apartment. And all the LARPers are there. And they're all like, we're designing costumes, and he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, we're both getting new costumes. This is going to be great.
And Kate's only going to the bargain that she made was she'll supply the materials for the new costumes for the LARPers, and by the way, they're going to make 2 more for them. So It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and then but he does end up getting his arrowheads back from the cop, who is and the cop that is from the comic books as well, which is kind of funny. But they end up like saying, "Okay, we need to, we got work to do."
Yeah.
And
then he makes a
phone call.
He calls his wife, Mrs. Barton, you little minx. Remember when Tony Stark said that to her? Man, boy, did that have meaning, huh? Well, I think there's something up with Laura Barton.
Of course. He calls his wife and says, hey, I need you to look something up for me. It looks like there was something that was missing from the Avengers compound. It's the watch. And so we've all been wondering what this watch is. And either it belonged to him or it belonged to her, or we don't know. It belonged to somebody that's important to him. He's like, the watch belonged to somebody who's been underground for a long time, which makes you feel like it's his wife.
Sure.
And then she's able to do a couple of things. She tracks down this Sloan Limited company and tells...
How did she pull that out? She's a housewife in the middle of Wisconsin.
She's like, I was able to look up Sloan Limited, and guess who the CEO is? It's Jack Duquesne.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Oh, by the way, then she starts talking German?
Right.
Come on.
Right. And then we find out that the watch, she gives it an address that it's still pinging, and here's the address that it's at.
Unbelievable. Right? Like, where is she getting this technology? She wasn't even shocked when he told her his
let's talk about the theories here.
Okay, she wasn't even shocked when he told her his plan, the catch and release from the tracksuits. I mean, that's a dangerous...
Tracksuit Mafia, those jokers. She knows everything.
She does. She's in. I think she's... Okay, let me hear your theory, and I'll tell you more.
Well, I mean, there are popular theories out there. I mean, first theory is, at a minimum, she used to work in S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Okay.
She was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent at one point in time. That's how they met. That's how they got married. And she got out of the game. So she's been out of the game for a long time.
That's how she understands the relationship between her and...
She is an old S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Yep.
And that's, really the reason why they were together. Surprising that Nick Fury didn't say anything or mention it, but he knew about his wife. So, I mean, but it also would explain why...
How did Nick Fury get in the barn? She called him.
It would also explain why there was never any tension between her and Natasha. Correct. Because... they were probably all together when they met, and that's, so they knew the level of relationship between all of them.
Yep.
But anyway...
why she's so willing to name her child...
Yeah. Big theory is that she's an old S.H.I.E.L.D. agent at a minimum, and she's been retired for a while, but she used to be in the game, and that's how she knows all this. She can look this stuff up, and she's helping them out, and all these other things.
And the other
the other theory out there is that she's Mockingbird, which is Bobby Morse, but her name's not Bobby. So that's one thing why I'm discounting that, and I don't know if they want to waste that character here. Okay. They could. It could be revealed, and they could swap the names.
Could she be another defect widow? Could she be a Black Widow that defected?
I don't think so. I think she's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent at a minimum. But I think if they say my wife, I think it may be revealed in the next couple of episodes that Hawkeye, explains to Kate. So my wife used to be in S.H.I.E.L.D. and she was an agent, and her code name was was Mockingbird, and she got out, and that's whose watch it is. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But, for them to waste Mockingbird and the Bobby Morse character and all that.
Like a Maria Hill type of level S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, I think that's at a minimum. Now, it could be Mockingbird.
You don't think she's a widow?
No. I don't think she's a widow. No, but she's definitely was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for sure.
Yeah. I mean...
There's no question.
She
knows way too much. Yeah.
Oh.
Not just because she's married to a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, but because she knows too much.
Mrs. Barton, you little minx.
Yeah.
It's weird that they call her a minx. I'm just saying. And she spoke German, so she knows other languages.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's...
Something's up with her. So my two suspects in this whole show are the mom and her.
Well, then we get... he goes to the address with Kate, and Kate's like, I'm going with you. You're not going by yourself. I'm going with you. We're partners. I'm going with you. So they go up on a roof.
The address of where the watch is being pinged.
Right.
Okay.
And he gives her a big lesson. She's like, we can't even see into the apartment from here. We're too low. And he's like, you're more concerned about the entrance than you are the exit. You always got to worry about your exit. So
Correct.
he's like, this is what he says. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in. I'm going to break into the apartment. And then I'm going to grappling hook down, all this other stuff. And all the while he's saying all this, she's on her way in there.
Yeah.
And again, total Kate Bishop, total this is exactly
Off the cuff,
her character.
Dangerous, reckless.
He's like, how are you going to get in? And she's like, befriends somebody who lives in the apartment who's bringing groceries in, picks up one of his bags, brings into the elevator, and she's like, I'm working with an Avenger.
Yeah, she's totally telling what exactly she's doing. It's hilarious.
And she's talking to him in her earpiece.
She's not a spy like he is.
She's talking to him in her earpiece in peace, and the guy's like, "Who are you talking to?" He goes, "I wasn't talking to you." It was great. But she ends up getting, basically just opening the door and getting into the apartment, and then she notices there's a couple of flashing lights that go off, and she shoots them with the I guess the putty arrows or whatever that has a big she knocks him out. She finds the watch, but then next to the watch is a notebook, and it has Clint Barton's name and the name of all of his kids and all their ages.
Yeah.
And she's like, Clint, there's some trouble. And he's like, get out of there.
Yeah.
He's like, those flashing lights, they're a silent alarm for somebody who's deaf.
Yes.
And then we see Echo come up and just basically clock her and knock her out. And then they're fighting a little bit.
Yeah.
She ends up able to shoot a grappling hook arrow to the roof that he's standing on.
She grabs the watch, yeah.
Grabs the watch and basically going over, and then, of course, it's still not low enough because she gets stuck halfway. But Echo ends up kicking her over there, and Hawkeye all the time is talking to her on the earpiece, and he goes, "It's Echo, she's here." And he's Kate's fighting her in the apartment, and Hawkeye's like, and she's like, "What? Who are you fighting?" He goes, "I don't know. Who are you fighting?" And there's somebody in a black costume with green night vision goggles on, and he's like, they're both fighting somebody different.
Yeah, and they end up all on the same rooftop fighting. Yeah,
yeah, and we see Kate and Echo and Hawkeye and this black costume individual all fighting each other.
Yeah,
Kate ends up getting thrown off the side of the building at one point in time, and Hawkeye says, "Get out of here!"
Yeah.
And he kind of cuts her loose.
That was a big scene right there. I think that was reminiscent of Natasha and him with the Soul Stone, dangling from that. And I don't know. I think he had flashbacks of it too.
But the four of them are all fighting against each other. They have no idea who any of them are. Kate ends up running back up to the roof eventually. Shoots a stun grenade arrow and it knocks everybody down. And the person in the black costume shoots, widow darts at both Clint, Echo and Clint, and kind of disable them temporarily. So we know it's a black widow. And again, we've known who this person's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Hawkeye eventually unmasks her, and it's Elena Belova.
Elena Belova, which is great. I mean, I'm so happy they introduced her this way. I thought it was really cool. It didn't seem like she was going to kill anybody. I think she was after the watch itself.
Well, I don't know. She looked like she was going to kill. Now, an important thing we left out was minutes before this scene started, we saw Kate's mom in her penthouse on a telephone talking to somebody and says, you need to come right now. We've got a problem.
Yeah.
And I've got a target.
Yeah.
And so
she says, I have a problem. you need to call me right away.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're assuming she's talking to somebody.
The uncle, maybe not. Well, maybe Val, uncle. Maybe uncle. Yeah. Big man.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, maybe Val. So who did she call? She either called Elena Belova directly.
Yep.
Potentially Val, who we know Elena Belova is working for.
At the moment.
I think the uncle, the big man, or whatever, we don't know who that is. But we'll
supposedly the Kingpin.
Yeah. But we'll see. But anyway, she's up there, and Hawkeye's alarmed. He doesn't know who this person is, but he's like, a Black Widow assassin's been sent.
Yeah.
He says a Black Widow assassin.
It's just got really real.
But he, even when he unmasked her, Kate said, "Who was that?" And he said, "You don't want to know. Somebody sent a Black Widow assassin to take us out."
It's just got real. You need to get out of here.
I don't. Do you think he knows who she is, or do you think he knows she's just a Black Widow?
I think he knows she's just a Black Widow. I don't think he knows who she is. That she's Natasha's sister. Interesting scene on the rooftop. Kate has a shot with an arrow, wide open shot of.
Once she got unmasked, this was when Clint got hit with the widow dart. And he's like reeling on the ground, and Kate has her straight in her sights. And he's Elena Belova, and Elena Belova just shakes her head at her like, "Don't take the shot."
And earlier in the episode, I think it's worth mentioning that she said, "What's the best shot you ever took?" And Clint says, "The shot I didn't take. I was out to kill somebody, and I just felt like she wanted out. I had a gut feeling she wanted out, and I didn't take the shot." And
he was talking about Natasha.
He was talking about Natasha, and when he was sent to kind of end her,
to take her out. He was sent to take her out in Budapest.
Yeah,
and that's the shot that he didn't take, and that's where they became friends and everything else. And so it was the best shot he ever took.
It's funny that it happened to Kate and Yolanda at the same rooftop.
What was her name?
Belova.
First name?
Ilana.
Yelena.
Yelena Belova at the same instance, like she was gonna take her out. And
she could have. She had a perfect shot.
Yeah, and she had nothing there. Who ended up with the watch?
We don't know.
I thought Yelena took it.
Did she? Do we know that for sure?
I thought she knocked it out of Kate.
I doubt that she was after the watch, though. She was there to kill Clint. I don't think she even knew anything about the watch.
Okay, for me, maybe I need to rewatch it, but I thought she kind of knocked it out and she picked it up. And then she threw her widow grappling hook and then took a dive off the building.
I don't know. I don't think she has the watch. I could be wrong there, but I don't think that was her mission. Her mission was to kill Clint.
If her mission was to kill Clint, I think she would have used a little bit more deadly force. I mean, she's obviously in the Black Widow movie, she's a marksman. She could have posted up on the building next to him and shot him from there. But she was like hand-to-hand combat. I think she was after the watch, too.
I don't know. All right. So that's how the episode ended. Big reveal. Yelena Belova's in the series. I don't think we're surprised by that at all.
Great actress. She's a cutie. She's a smoke show.
Florence Pugh.
Yeah, Florence Pugh. I'm really glad she's a part of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to see her in 5 and episode 6.
Yeah, I think there's been previews or trailers for the next couple of episodes. We know she's back. We know that she has some speaking parts, and we kind of get to learn a little bit more about her. So there's one theory I wanted to talk about. I feel so. Look, there's been allusions or kind of theories early on about the show that Kate's mom is more than she's leading us to believe that she is.
She is.
And, the theories are that she's now going to be the Madame Mask character, who is a character from the Matt Fraction Hawkeye comics, that they're going to end up making her Madame Mask, who is a, kind of criminal underground kind of boss. I think Jack, while you think that he may have been the Ronin character who killed Echo's father, which very well could be, I think he's a lackey. I think he's completely oblivious. I don't think he knows exactly what's going on. I don't think he knows he's the CEO of Sloan Limited. I think they're just using him as a patsy. I think he's completely oblivious to all of this.
He's just hired muscle.
Either that or he's
obviously a very talented swordsman.
Yes. So he's either playing coy, which I think they're leading us to believe that he is, or he's being led on by these people, and he just works for them, right? This relationship he has with Kate's mom is completely manufactured, and it's just a part that he's playing, you know. But I think Kate's mom is the one who we find out is now kind of like the middleman in charge of all this between the Kingpin and everything else. I do think the person that she called was Val. I think that's going to be the big reveal, is that Val was the one who's kind of like,
orchestrating things.
Yes, absolutely.
And is Kate's father still alive, or do we think he's absolutely dead?
I think he's alive.
I think he's still alive as well.
I think he faked his death for the insurance and to kind of set the family up. And I think they were in financial trouble, and it was a convenient way for him to get out. And I think eventually he will come back and we'll figure out who he is or where he is and all those other things. And that might be the big reveal in the end of the show or whatever, right?
You like where it's going. You like the narrative. You like the storytelling.
It's been great. And I can't wait for the next one. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat. I can't wait either. Yeah. I think it's going to be great. Next two episodes will be fantastic.
They're setting up, obviously Yelena Belova wants to kill Hawkeye because of what he did to her sister. I don't think Hawkeye knows they're sisters. I don't think he knows the relationship the two of them have. He just knows she's a Black Widow. Eventually he's have to explain it to her, and they'll end up becoming friends. And I think Yelena eventually ends up working with them instead of against them at the end of the episode. They probably fight a little bit next episode, but then they come to some agreement, and then she ends up becoming an ally. And I think she, as well as Kate, end up becoming, this next kind of generation of potential young Avengers, or, we'll see kind of where that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's, if you remember the Black Widow movie when they're in Budapest and they're hiding up in the ducts of the train station in Budapest, and there like some writings and stuff, and this is where me and Clint Barton hid out, and I think she was telling her a little bit about Clint Barton. I think she's a little bit onto that. I don't know if I think she was after the Watch for some reason. So, I don't know.
All right.
We'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah, great episode. What else we got, Professor?
Well, I wanted to just kind of tell the audience that, we've been doing a little bit of travel here over the last couple months. And when I traveled over Thanksgiving, I was like looking for something to watch on the airplane, as I always do. And I usually rewatch something I've seen a million times. I'm like, you know what? The original Wesley Snipes Blade series was one of my favorites.
Awesome.
The trilogy,
number one.
Well, all three of them.
Yeah.
They made 3 movies.
Yeah.
But the original trilogy was one of my favorites, and I'm like, I have watched the original Blade probably 10 times. I mean, it's the original Blade is so fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I really don't remember a lot about Blade 2 and Blade 3. Let me watch those again. All I knew was the guy from The Walking Dead was in Blade 2. I remember that. But I'm like, and I think Ryan Reynolds was in Blade 3. I was like, yeah, let me...
Really?
Oh, yeah. So I watched both of them back to back, kind of one on the plane down and one on the plane ride back. And I was like, oh, let me watch these again. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Blade 2 is really about kind of, Whistler's still in that movie, but it's about... them kind of, the vampires start working with Blade because there's now this new, deviant gene version of vampires that were created by the top vampire, and he has to kind of work with them. And what's the guy's name from Sons of Anarchy that played Hellboy? I can't remember his name. He's a big actor in the movie. Mm-hmm. One of the bads. And then the third movie, Blade 3, it's called Blade Trinity, actually. That has the Night Stalkers in it, which is their comic book characters. I actually have Night Stalker comics. This is a team of vampire hunters that are put together. And again, Ryan Reynolds is in it.
Wow.
Who's Justin Timberlake's wife? Smoke Show, I can't remember her name. She's in it. Mm-hmm. Who's Whistler's daughter. But anyway, it was great. And I was like, man, these are great movies. And look, Wesley Snipes was so good as a Blade character. He was just so good. And hey, if you haven't watched them in a while, go back and see them. They're great movies.
Blake Lively? No, that's Ryan Reynolds.
That's Ryan Reynolds.
She's Smoke Show.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, go back and see them. They're good movies. They're worth watching. And again, we know Mahershala Ali is going to be playing that character. We think we heard his voice at the end of the Eternals and one of the post-credit scenes.
Don't say that, Professor. We absolutely heard his voice.
So we think that Marvel's got big plans not only for the Blade character, but also the Black Knight and some other things. So, hey, that character's coming back. But look, Wesley Snipes killed it. For 3 movies, he absolutely killed it. I'm going to have to watch.
I'm going to have to go in and watch Blade 1 again.
Blade 1 is so good.
Yeah, it is good. I remember it as being very good. I'm going to watch that again before the Blade even starts to film.
But 2 and 3 are worth watching. Yeah. They're good movies. Yeah. So, anyway, the Daywalker is fun to watch, and I just wanted to remind people that they're out there, and I think they're available on. I can't remember if it's HBO Max or something. They were out there. Some were free that I could watch them. Wow. They're out there. Anyway, just wanted to mention that. So let's jump right into the news section. We've got a bunch of things this week that came out since our last show.
And news is brought to you by?
News is not brought to us by anybody.
No?
No.
Studio GG Studios?
No, that's our topic of the week.
Topic of the week, okay. I just love saying their name, so.
So our news section, we'll start for the first news item. So big confirmation, Marvel did come out with an official announcement that they have greenlit Shang-Chi 2. So we know Shang-Chi's coming, second version of that movie is coming out, and Destin Cretton is going to be back to return as the director of that movie. I remember him being interviewed several times when the original Shang-Chi came out, and they were asking him, hey, are you thinking about sequels when you're making movies? He goes, you're part of the Marvel Universe. You kind of automatically kind of try to put things in the movie or think about what's going to be next. So I think he had a feeling they were going to do a second one, but look, the movie did gangbusters. It was great. I think it's the most successful movie during the pandemic. Both if you add in theater and home, it did awesome. So hey, great for Simu Liu and great for the Shang-Chi character.
Yeah, I think he's a great director, Dustin. And I also heard that he was affiliated with developing a show as well as series for Disney Plus. And there's no speculation or anything about that. I got my fingers
based on the
crossed.
10 Rings.
I don't know if it's based on the 10 Rings or not. It might be, but no one really knows the premise of it. But he's developing a show. I'm hoping it's Agent Wu. Is it Agent Wu, right? Agent Wu and Darcy.
Oh, really? You think that's who he's aligned to? I thought it was the other post-credit scene from Shang-Chi. I thought it was the Disney Plus series based on the 10 Rings that now his sister Zhai Ling is now in charge of. I thought that's what the Disney Plus series he was going to do.
That would be cool too.
Yeah. I mean, we have a feeling.
Agents of Atlas. What else? Maybe a sword agent show or the 10 Rings. I think all of it would be deadly. We have no idea what he's developing, but that'll be exciting. He's a great director, and come on. Shang-Chi 2? Yeah. Come on.
So we know that's on the docket. Yep. Again, hopefully we'll get some announcements about when, but we know that they've greenlit that project, and great for the entire cast and crew that's been involved with that movie. It was awesome. You had some news about one of your favorite characters, Modoc.
Modoc, yeah. And we've got a lot of rumors about Jim Carrey, Bill Murray, signing on to the MCU as characters. All rumors, obviously, but I guess we're going to get Modoc in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So that'll be kind of fun. I mean, we know we're going to get Kang in that movie, right? That's
we know he's the big bad of the movie, and potentially the big bad of the MCU in this next phase. I mean, that's I think the way they're setting it up with what we saw in Loki, and then knowing that he was already going to be in Quantumania. Modoc, interesting character. There was a Hulu series. It was kind of more comedic, but the Modoc is a genetically enhanced individual who ended up having like a gigantic head and a kind of a robot body, but he has an incredible mind, and he's a very big thought leader, and he's the leader of AIM. And I think that's the AIM that we've seen in the MCU was kind of the AIM that was part of Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
That was led by, who did Guy Pearce play? What was the name of the character? Killian. But AIM was a think tank that developed, the extremist technology in that movie. But AIM is Advanced Idea Mechanics, which is what AIM stands for. Modoc was the leader of AIM, which is a big kind of like criminal organization, very similar to Hydra in the MCU, in the comic books. And to bring AIM back and to bring Modoc as the leader of AIM would be huge for the MCU.
Yeah, that'd be very cool. I'd like to see that.
And so, again, there's rumors or theories that may be who Jim Carrey is playing in the MCU. So who knows?
Maybe
we'll see.
Bill Murray.
We'll see.
I know.
Well,
awesome.
both of those actors have been linked to that project, so we'll see.
Yeah.
you got another announcement
Huge
from Kevin
news.
Feige.
This is huge.
Well, it's what we assumed, but all it is confirmation of what we've already kind of like really been told.
Yes. That Charlie Cox, if Daredevil.
So this is Kevin Feige.
This is Kevin Feige saying this in an interview with what's her name from Sony, Patricia
Pasquale, Amy Pasquale.
Amy Pasquale and Kevin Feige are in an interview, and he's being asked about the Daredevil character, and Kevin Feige comes out and says that if and when the Daredevil shows up in the MCU, it will be Charlie Cox.
He said, we will not recast the Daredevil character.
If
he shows up in the MCU, we don't know if or when he's going to do it, but if he does show up in the MCU, it will be Charlie Cox.
He's like somebody on a first date. He's so fucking coy.
Well, look, rumors are he's in Spider-Man No Way Home, right?
You think so?
We've already seen screenshots and things and that's one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about Spider-Man. But yes, rumors are he makes an appearance in that movie as Matt Murdock. Okay,
so you don't think he's going to make his appearance in Hawkeye? You think Spider-Man No Way Home?
No. Yes.
Okay.
I think
She-Hulk, but okay.
Spider-Man No Way Home. Well, that's what I'm saying. We have a feeling he's in Spider-Man No Way Home. We believe he's going to be in She-Hulk.
Okay.
We believe he's going to be in the Echo series. We believe they're developing a Daredevil series with Charlie Cox. Nice. Those are things we've been told. And, again, this is just for Kevin Feige to come out and confirm it. All it does is confirm everything that we thought was going to happen anyway. Yeah. Right. And good for Charlie Cox because he was freaking awesome as Daredevil.
He's great. Yeah, he's doing victory laps right now. Like he's running around his house screaming, yes, yes.
Yeah, right.
Which leads me to believe that the Kingpin is going to definitely be in this series.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, and look, we'll mention this because it's one of my favorite internet shows. One of my favorite internet shows, Hot Ones. If you don't watch it, please go on YouTube and look up the channel First We Feast. The name of the show is Hot Ones. Sean Evans is the host. He brings a celebrity on every week, and they eat 10 increasingly hot chicken wings while he's interviewing them. It's awesome. And it's great. They're great interviews to begin with, and they're usually great people on the show. But watching these celebrities eat hot chicken wings is funny as hell.
Yeah.
And this week we had Tom Holland on promoting Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep.
So to get Tom Holland on one of my favorite shows, watching him eat chicken wings, and look, you mentioned something to me which is so real. The guy is just so likable.
He's so lovable. I mean, he's such a sweet kid and so funny and down to earth. I mean, he's not pretentious. There's nothing. His ego is absolutely checked at the door, and he's just a really
normal guy.
Normal guy.
Hey, we'd all love to have a beer with him. We'd all love to hang out with him. He's just seems like a really likable guy, and he comes across very well in the interview. Talks a lot about his time in the MCU and everything else. So go check it out. Go check out Hot Ones. Support the show because I love the show.
Great story about his favorite thing that he was given. He was actually given.
The thing that from a Marvel movie.
From a Marvel movie, and we're not going to spoil it, but you got to go watch it and find out. It's a brilliant story.
Yeah, awesome. Just wanted to mention that. Please go check them out. And hey, we got some news that both Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany were nominated for Golden Globes based on their portrayal of their roles in the WandaVision series. So both nominated in the Best Actor and Best Actress category for limited series. Hey, that just shows you how powerful the show is. I mean, again, these are more accolades that this show did get Emmy nominations, and now it's got some Golden Globe nominations. Good for them.
Yeah, good for them. Woke Hollywood can sit on my face, but good for them. I'm glad they've always won awards in my heart. So, but I know that means the Golden Globes, the Oscars, and things like that mean something to.
Hey, we get to see Elizabeth Olsen dressed up in a fancy dress on Golden Globes night.
Something low cut, probably see through. I hope. Okay, sorry, I digress. But she's a smoke show.
And we mentioned earlier the Spider-Man No Way Home premiere that's happening tonight. So I wanted to take this time. Let's just talk about the things that we expect to happen that have been rumored a million times. That here's things that we think are going to happen. And so we'll just talk. The first one we just talked about a couple minutes ago. I think Charlie Cox is in the movie. I think he plays Matt Murdock. I think he's representing Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man in court, as all this stuff is happening to him early in the movie. I think they end up having a sit down, and he maybe even reveals the fact that he's Daredevil. I don't know, but we'll see. I think he's in the movie, and I think we'll see that.
Okay, that'll be interesting. That'll be shocking to me. I haven't heard any of that, and I'm glad I haven't. I haven't seen any screenshots of it, and I'm super glad I haven't. So if that
he was rumored to be on set like years ago when they first started filming this movie.
Well, I know the guy that plays Venom, Eddie Brock. What's the actor that plays Eddie Brock, Venom?
Yeah,
he's been seen wearing the hat, and I know that he has something to do with this. That's for sure. I did see that. Maybe not
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, and that'll be shocking to me. But
that's the other rumor that potentially, at a minimum, I think we see a Venom post-credit scene.
That'd be cool.
Whether he cameos in the movie or we see him in the movie, yet to be seen. But I think he will be definitely a part of a post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home. It just makes sense for Sony to promote the kind of crossover between Venom and Spider-Man that they alluded to at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage.
Do you think we see Wanda Maximoff in?
I think that's another one.
Okay.
Is that potentially Wanda Maximoff is either in the movie or ultimately we find out has been manipulating Doctor Strange or doing things unbeknownst to him that have caused some of the situations that are happening in the movie, and that leads into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, right? And again, whether it's a small cameo or at the end of the movie we find out it's her, I think that would not surprise me at all.
Cool.
And of course the Andrew Garfield, Tobey
worst
Maguire,
kept secret
that's happening. We know it's happening. I just want to be able to see it by myself before somebody else spoils it.
Me too.
But, yeah.
Don't spoil that. I want to confirm my speculations on that.
Yeah. And look, here's another thing I'm thinking. I think a pretty big character dies in this movie.
Wow. Okay. You think a pretty big character dies in
I
this
think
movie?
it's possible. So,
who do you think?
Well, here's my theory. Ned Leeds, who is Spider-Man's best friend right now, Ned Leeds, in the comic books, is the Hobgoblin character.
Yeah.
It's the name of the person who plays the Hobgoblin.
Yep.
And it would not surprise me nor shock me. I mean, why would you cast a character with that name in a Spider-Man movie if there was never ever going to be a future version of Hobgoblin?
Right.
So what if he ends up dying, or we think he dies, and then something happens that ends up leading him down that path? I just think, why would you do that if you're not... It's been now 3 movies. Why aren't we setting that up?
Right.
I think they have to set it up somehow, and I would not be surprised if Ned bites the bullet in this movie.
Wow, that would be kind of cool. I like that storyline. I like it better. I'd like to see Ned bite the bullet than MJ.
Yeah. I don't think MJ goes anywhere. Zendaya's too big of a character.
Huge of a character. And that would be... But who knows? Sony's taking the reins. And we do know that Sony's going to do 3 more Spider-Man movies.
Yep, they did confirm that we got another trilogy coming, right? That was one of the things that Amy Pasquale said. She came out and said, look, this is the end of the Spider-Man Home trilogy. We got Homecoming, Far From Home, and now No Way Home. We are now moving into a new trilogy with Tom Holland. There will be another 3 movies with this actor,
Tom Holland, yeah.
And in cooperation with Marvel, which is also huge, which means that the sharing agreement's been renewed. So we know it's
exciting.
They got to do something with it, right? Okay, let's get into our top of the week. Top of the week every week is brought to us by Studio GG Studios.
There they are.
Home of the Man Band, Corn on the Cob.
Corn on the Cob. Lovely little bastards down in South Carolina. Hey, Corn on the Cob, we love you. Home of the Man Band. Bring us new content. I know
Open the studio already. Come on. The flood happened like 2 months ago.
The studio's put together. It's all set up. And they're back in the studio recording new music. So that's exciting.
All right. Well, top of the week this week, I'm going to go into... So, again, the big illusions in Hawkeye is that there's this big bad that we don't know. The uncle...
The Kingpin.
We don't know who it is, but we think it's the Kingpin.
We think it's the Kingpin. It's the Kingpin.
Again, the Kingpin has been portrayed in television or movies by 2 different actors.
Yeah.
Originally in the Ben Affleck version of the Daredevil movie, it was played by... Michael Clark Duncan.
Michael Clark
I
Duncan.
believe the guy from
Green Mile.
The Green Mile.
The Green Mile.
The Green Mile, yes. So I think he played the Kingpin in that movie. And then in the Daredevil series and the Punisher series, it was played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who just absolutely killed it. Played that character to a T, and really was very comic book accurate as well. So I'm going to go into a little bit of history behind this Kingpin character, specifically about the comic books, but we'll talk a little bit about how we think that's going to play into this series. I did want to mention before we started talking about the Kingpin. So in this show, they've alluded to this person who might be in charge, and Hawkeye said this several times, the big guy. So there was a criminal in the Marvel comics called the big guy, or the big man, and his name was Frederick Foswell. He was a cop, actually, who had a second life as a criminal in the organized crime underground. He ended up being, at one point in time, the Kingpin's second lieutenant. Ended up dying at one point, in the comic books, but he was called the big man.
You think that's who they're talking about in Hawkeye?
I'm saying it could be a big misdirect.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They could be saying they're telling us it's the Kingpin, but the big guy is actually this Frederick Foswell character.
I'll be pissed.
Yes.
I'll be pissed.
So I just wanted to mention that because
Cool.
there
That's
was
a nice nugget.
there was somebody that was called the big guy.
Okay.
He or the big man.
Right.
He was a comic book character. But anyway, we'll get into Wilson Fisk, the character. So there's not a lot known about his history before he showed up as the Kingpin of crime in the comic books. I think we learned a little bit later that he grew up in a very poor family. His father was a crack addict, and he was really kind of left on his own, and he made a decision to say, look, I'm going to dedicate myself to making myself better than the situation that I'm in. And he dedicated himself to making himself the best he could be physically as well as mentally. And so he literally dedicated himself to weight training, and the guy just completely was going to bang weights as much and as often as he can to become the strongest that he ever could become. And then he studied a lot of martial arts and fighting skills, and he says, nobody's going to pick on me. I'm going to be the guy that takes everybody's name.
Uh-huh.
And not
just a big tub of lard.
No, he was a chubby kid, but then eventually he's just like, this is not going to be me when I grow up, right? So he was self-educated completely. I mean, obviously in and out of school a lot, but he read as many books as he could get his hands on. He stole a lot of books from bookstores. It was the only way that he could educate himself, but he became very educated, committed his first murder at the age of 12, but by the age of 15, he had already built his own criminal empire, and it was basically a bunch of drug addicts and kind of other people that worked for other criminal organizations, and he kind of made his own little gang. And they were so successful at crime that he ended up getting, nobody knew who he was, but he ended up getting the nickname Kingpin of Crime. So that's where the Kingpin nickname first came from.
Right.
And then so as his criminal empire rose, he made the decision, again, very self-educated. He's like, I'm going to take all the proceeds from all of my crime, and I'm going to reinvest those proceeds into legitimate businesses. And he became known as a guy who was he was a spice dealer. Uh-huh. So he was involved in trading spices, like Far Eastern spices. He had a fascination with the Far East, and so he's like, hey, I'm going to start trading spices. But all the money he would make from stealing things, he would reinvest into legitimate businesses, so much so that society thought of him as legitimate businessman who was very wealthy and very prominent and very influential. And of course, he was paying off cops, he was paying off politicians and all this other stuff. But he was a legitimate businessman as far as society knew him. And we saw that very well portrayed in the Daredevil Netflix series. Yeah. Society thought he was a legitimate businessman, New York businessman, very influential. As much, I think, in that series, he ran for office. I think he was running for mayor or something like that.
Yep.
But anyway, he was, that was his strategy. He's like, I'm going to take all this money that I steal and I'm going to reinvest it into legitimate businesses so that people think I'm legit. And it was a brilliant move on his part. Mm-hmm. He ended up getting married a woman named Vanessa, who was portrayed in the Daredevil Netflix series. He and Vanessa got married. They ended up having a son named Richard. He's been in so many comic books and featured so many times, Spider-Man specifically, but then ultimately he was in Daredevil comic books a million times. He doesn't have any superpowers.
Right. Okay, that was one of my questions. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
just
not
super strong, right?
So he's an enormous human being.
Yeah.
Like he is huge.
Like a sumo wrestler.
Right, but he is like so huge that people think he's fat. Well, the fact of the matter is, of his entire body, only like 6 pounds of it is fat. The rest of it is pure muscle. So this guy is enormous. He's an enormous human being, but it's all muscle. So he's
Kind of like Dave Bautista.
Yeah. What they say is he is as strong as a human can be without being superhuman.
Wow.
So he's about as strong as you can be. He basically has picked up like 1,500-pound tables and thrown them at people. He's crushed people's heads in his bare hands. He's able to really do anything that he can without any superpowers. But people underestimate him because they see his physical appearance and they think he's fat, but he's actually strong as all get out.
I think we saw a little bit of that in the in the Daredevil series, the Netflix series, when he was in prison and he was like throwing people around and beating the shit out of people.
Yeah. He totally
with his bare hands, killing people with his bare hands.
Tore up the Punisher in prison as well.
Oh my God, yeah. So okay, that was a big question of mine. I think our listeners had that question. Is he just some big fat guy, or is he a muscle guy?
No, he's all muscle. So
Very cool.
He's a big dude, but he's all muscle.
I hope listening.
Yeah,
audience,
so we'll see. And again, I hope Vincent D'Onofrio is back because he was awesome.
Yeah. I hope he is too.
All right, well, we have a special listener question of the week this week, don't we?
We absolutely do, Professor. Flying in from wherever he flies in from, we have one of our super fans, Tim St. Laurent, flying in with a question of the week.
Tiny Tim.
Whoa! Hey, Super Talk fans! Hope you're doing good! Whoa! Hey, Professor Titanium!
Hey, Tim!
Whoa! Hey, I had a question about Iron Man. Is he coming back? Is Iron Man going to come back? Or is that done? That series done? Okay? Alright, thanks, guys! Bye!
Hey, thanks for flying in. All right, thanks. Thanks, Tiny Tim. Well, that was a good question. Is Iron Man done, or are we going to see Iron Man again?
So there's two parts of this question: the character Iron Man, and more importantly, the actor Robert Downey Jr.
Correct.
I think those are the because look, RDJ killed it in the MCU.
No question.
The OG.
He's a legend.
The original MCU character, the one who started the entire Marvel Studios journey, had a huge long run over 10 years in the MCU. Was in 3 Iron Man movies, 4 Avengers movies, a Captain America movie, a Spider-Man movie. I mean, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
I think he's made it pretty clear that he's done.
Okay.
Now, that being said, money does a lot of crazy things to people, right? And I think after having taken a few years off, 3 or 4 years, do I ever think RDJ's ever coming back to play Iron Man? No. Do I think we will ever see Tony Stark in some form or fashion
like an
in
AI?
MCU?
Yeah.
I think possibly.
Okay.
And
like maybe an Ironheart, he's an AI, kind of like Jarvis.
Well, that's what I was going to allude to, is that there, one of the things that we at Super Talk do, and I think the fans do, is all these things you see up here, these toys, that is one of the reasons why they make these movies and these television shows, is so they can sell toys, right? And the toy companies created a toy as part of their marketing that was the Iron Man AI. And we're like, wait a minute. And it was the Iron Man suit with kind of a holographic head on top of it. And we're like, what is that?
Right.
And so there's potential concepts or thoughts about Tony Stark, potentially Robert Downey Jr., coming back into the MCU as an AI version of the Tony Stark character. So think of it being like Jarvis was for Iron Man or Tony Stark.
That's what I could see him doing.
But now Tony Stark is the Jarvis for Ironheart.
Great.
Or potentially in the Armor Wars series in Disney Plus, right? That we have a version of Iron Man that is an empty suit that is being run by the Tony
AI.
Stark AI.
Yeah.
So he's found some way to take his brain patterns and save them so that they can come back, that he can be part of the MCU or part of the Avengers team, but he's not physically there, but he's like a
Jarvis.
computer version. Yeah.
Cool.
Like exactly like Jarvis.
Yeah.
I think absolutely. Now, do I think some alternate reality version of Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. come back in the MCU? No.
No, I don't think so either.
More likely that it happens.
Do
with
they reboot the Iron Man character? I don't think so. Not for a very long time.
No, I think very similar to what they did with Hugh Jackman. I mean, he just did the Wolverine character so well that they were so reluctant to reboot that as popular as that character is. They were like, we can't recast this character yet. That we have to, give it a few years.
Yeah.
And I think if Iron Man gets rebooted and recast, it will be years. Like you said, like 4 or 5 years.
Agreed.
And will it be Tony Stark?
No. Well, it won't be Robert Downey Jr.
No, it won't
sure.
be Robbie Downey Jr., but will it be another version of Tony Stark? I mean, gosh, I think one of the things that Marvel's done such a great job of is maintaining the continuity and never ever really doing a full reboot.
Right.
And to say we're going to reboot Tony Stark, I don't think so.
Good.
But I think, is it possible that he comes back as the AI part of Ironheart or part of Armor Wars or part of Morgan, his daughter, who ends up being in Young Avengers?
Yeah.
Oh, I could totally see that, because all he has to do is go in the studio and talk in a microphone or whatever. And so I think he could absolutely do
Awesome.
that.
Great answer, Professor. Hey, let's ring the bell. School's over. Thanks, everybody.
All right, well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com, or at supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we're out. Thanks, YouTube. Please like and subscribe.
How's
Thanks
your
to
flight?
Our special guest, Tiny Timmy. Thanks, YouTube.